Yo, what's going on, you guys? So today we're starting our journey into the Transformers IDW collection. Now, I know this is a long series. It's been out since like 2005. There's a lot to cover, but you guys asked for it, so I'm going to try to deliver as best as I possibly can. Now, I know there's a lot of different ways for us to approach this story. I see all the different reading order suggestions online, on Reddit, different forums for Transformers comics, but I thought if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it in the same order, the same format that you would find in the hardcover copies that you can buy at the bookstore, which means that we're going to kick things off with a deep dive into Megatron's origins. 4 million years ago in the Cybertron system, there was peace. Aboard his vessel, Senator Decimus and his assistant are set to arrive at a rundown mining outpost. They're here to deliver a formal message to the employees of the outpost, one that Senator Decimus' assistant points out that the employees will not like. Decimus reminds him that liking it isn't the point. Everyone has a job to do. Each bot is a cog in the great machine that keeps Cybertron running. He reminds his assistant that he calls the grand halls of Iacon his home, and has no taste for the wretched Energon mines. He sees the mines as pitiful, filled with degenerate scum, only capable of swinging heavy tools. But they need the mines, and they need the Energon. The only thing they don't need are the scum that operate it. At the end of the cycle, his assistant may be right. They won't like it, but perhaps he's confused Decimus for someone who actually cares. After all, isn't that what security is for? At the assembly, the workforce has gathered to hear Senator Decimus's message. Decimus begins by explaining that the hub has been facing challenges, and they seek to streamline the process any way that they can. That the Senate thanks each and every bot for their contribution to the mine, but that their hard work at Outpost C12 has come to an end. He continues that while this outpost has felt like a home for many of them, the Senate will help them find a new home and new assignments because the Senate takes care of its people. This announcement naturally goes down poorly, and a laborer speaks up to remind Decimus that the mine still has fuel in it. Surely the Senate knows this. Decimus tries to assure the bot that this decision did not come at any fault of the mine itself, and the Senate has been tracking its location for quite some time. But he's cut off, and the laborer accuses Decimus and the Senate of firing the workforce in favor of automation. He continues that he's seen how greedy the Senate has become, automating mine after mine, and while there's plenty of fuel to go around, the working class has been left to run on empty. And now, after all this, they want to kick them out of the mine and told to be grateful for it? The Senate will take and take until they're told to stop, or until they're made to stop. The laborer begins to step forward towards Decimus and is directed to step back by an Autobot security officer, which consequently gets the laborer executed right in front of the entire assembly. The assembly is outraged at what has just transpired, and as the group push forward towards their fallen worker, the Autobot security officer reminds them to stay back. Can't they see what will happen to them if they refuse to listen? Senator Decimus tries to calm the crowd and restore order, pleading with them, calling them brothers. He explains to them that if they just stay calm, he will take them through the terms of the facility redesignation, and swears that the Senate is making sure they'll get exactly what they deserve. But before he can finish his sentence, an axe flies through the air and hits Decimus directly in the shoulder. Autobot security officers rush forward, planning to stop any further attacks, but one of the security officers is tackled to the ground by the laborer responsible for throwing the axe at Decimus. His name is Megatron. The officer snidely calls him dirt-hauling scum and points his blaster towards Megatron, but he knocks it away. Megatron seems to have the upper hand, and he's got the officer pinned down to the ground. The Autobot tries to fight him off by grabbing Megatron's head, perhaps hoping to squeeze out his optics. But Megatron goes into a fit of rage and begins hammering his fist down onto the Autobot officer with no end in sight. While all of this is happening, the crowd gathered at the assembly become enraged and quickly charge the senator's position, fully intent on tearing him and his officers apart. But Megatron is stunned at what he's done. He didn't mean to take a life. Maybe he's taken it too far. Or perhaps this was a necessary act of defiance. As the crowd continues to push forward, Decimus stays in the clear thanks to his assistant, who commands the security forces to deal with the enraged workers before they kill them all. The Autobot security officers aim their blasters and begin to fire at will, swiftly overpowering the crowd of laborers who once occupied Outpost C-12. But Megatron falls unconscious, and while those remain begin to guess what comes next for them, prison if they're lucky, or a breakdown if they're not, they have him, Megatron, the bot responsible for all of this, to blame. The remaining laborers are gathered and arrested and then placed on a transport shuttle called Longshot, with intentions to escort them to a facility that's known as the Rig. When Megatron awakens, he admits that what happened was unintentional, that he shouldn't be here. Megatron is then approached by Rumble and Frenzy, who have a plan to break free from their restraints, and they get the attention of the guards and lead an attack in an attempt to seize control of the ship. Aboard Decimus's shuttle, they try to make contact with Longshot to question why it has deviated from its original flight plan. Decimus questions what they plan on doing, but with little notice, the Longshot comes about and blasts Decimus's shuttle, leaving it stranded in deep space. The Longshot then arrives in Kaon, the worst place on Cybertron, and Megatron is questioned about his motives, specifically why he didn't just destroy Decimus's shuttle when he had the chance, and he explains that this was a deliberate plan to distract the Autobots with a rescue mission, giving the laborers the opportunity to plot a course to Cybertron. If they had destroyed the shuttle, the Autobots' first priority would have been to hunt for them. But now that they have arrived in Kaon, they need a new plan, and that plan, at least for now, requires them to disappear. Meanwhile, at the Security HQ in Kaon, Sentinel Prime is advised of a report detailing a Beta-grade incident in their airspace, reporting one shuttle lost and one shuttle down. But Sentinel isn't bothered by Prowl's report and commands him to follow protocol. Prowl insists that under normal circumstances he wouldn't bother Sentinel, but this involves a life-threatening attack on a senator. The only information he has, though, is the location of a distress beacon and a prior report of a disturbance at an off-planet facility. Sentinel Prime couldn't care less. He doesn't want to deal with another whining senator. Prowl promises to have a report as soon as possible, and the Senate kept up to date on the situation as it unfolds. But Sentinel cuts him off, and assures Prowl that whatever happened is probably nothing compared to what they deal with in Kaon. Since returning to Cybertron, Megatron and the laborers of Outpost C-12 have made new lives for themselves as gladiators, competing in illegal fights that take place in the Forge. In his first match, Megatron finds himself facing off against a particularly tough bot, who shrugs off Megatron's attempts to impale him. That is, until Megatron uses his alternate mode as a weapon, utilizing its weight to run his opponent over. The other gladiator lies helpless, and Megatron hesitates to deliver the killing blow, and the crowd becomes confused and wonders why Megatron hasn't ended the fight yet. But Clench, the ringmaster of these fights, orders Megatron to finish it. Megatron lifts the spear above his head, and the crowd begins to cheer and encourage Megatron to end the fight, and Clench commands him once again to finish it. But Megatron is briefly haunted by the memory of taking his first life, but he snaps out of it and swings the spear downwards and fatally stabs his opponent. The fight is over, and Clench remarks that now he knows what it takes to be a champion. The arena fills with cheers from the crowds, mesmerized by the dominating display of this new gladiator, and his name is one few will ever forget, Megatron. Meanwhile, Senator Ratbat dismisses the concerns of his assistant to attend to more important matters. He doesn't have time to fill out forms. His role is the application of wisdom through judgment, and he has something more consequential to attend to. Ratbat is a thoroughly corrupt member of the Cybertronian Senate, and he uses his wealth and connections to easily manipulate planetary events for his personal gain. As he mulls over reports of stock investments and the sale of other investments in repulsor technology, he comes across a report about the illegal gladiator fights. Each video file contains the triumph of the gladiator known as Megatron, his battle in the Solid Steel Showdown, the Off-World Open Invite, and a particularly brutal fight titled Slaughter Squared. These battles intrigue Ratbat, and he sends his servant to investigate. As time passes, Megatron quickly rises through the ranks of the gladiators, and eventually finds himself fighting alongside Clench, the ringmaster. During the match, Clench's group is backed into a corner, and Clench is speared through the chest. As the mighty Clench is damaged, Megatron moves in for the killing blow. And the audio of a recording reads aloud the rest of the report, highlighting Megatron's callousness towards his victims, and that he encourages aggressive attitudes and takes pleasure in pain and humiliation. This is either a serious assault or murder. Either way, this was the exact moment where Megatron overthrew Clench to seize power for himself. These illegal fights have also caught the attention of Cybertronian law enforcement, and they begin to become increasingly worried about the rise of illegal fights and the prominence of Megatron. Unfortunately for them, they've been unable to find the location for these illicit activities. If their response team could pin down a location, maybe they'd be able to stop them. Suddenly, Sentinel Prime enters the room, and all the bots come to attention. Sentinel explains that he's done playing games, and proposes a plan to shut these gladiators down. He plans to place 8 tactical recon teams on permanent postings at probable future arenas. The core team will respond when the net is triggered. These gladiators may be evasive, but they're not invisible, and they plan to wait for them to become vulnerable, so the tactical team can move in and take them down. Sentinel promises that they will crack down on this cult, and the leader, Megatron, will hang. 18 cycles later, Bumper and Fastback stake out a location suspected to be the grounds for the next fight. Their plan? Mouths shut, eyes open, and to maintain radio silence until an alpha target is spotted or the field team is compromised. But Bumper is alarmed to see the Constructicons arrive, and soon discovers that the reason they've been unable to track the gladiators between venues is because they build it on site using parts obtained by unfortunate bots like Weasel, who finds himself thrown into a smelting pool, so his metal can be melted down and become the rivets and plates required to refit the abandoned venue into a suitable arena. The Constructicons begin their work outfitting the arena with the parts they've manufactured from Weasel's body when Megatron arrives. He's frustrated that construction of the arena is behind schedule, but a voice calls out to confirm Megatron's designation. This faceless bot explains to Megatron that he has a proposal for him: technology, weaponry, the means to modify himself to incorporate those technologies, but Megatron cuts him off and demands he show himself. Following his command, Soundwave appears, and on behalf of his employer, he offers Megatron access to black market weaponry, provided Megatron only uses it as he sees fit. Bumper and Fastback witness the entire exchange but become compromised when they're spotted by Megatron. The Autobots try to call for reinforcements, but they're immediately ambushed by Soundwave's minions, Ravage, Laserbeak, and Buzzsaw. Bumper goes unconscious, but soon awakens to see Megatron stomping Fastback to death, before turning his attention over to Bumper. Soundwave questions what the purpose of terminating the prisoner is, and Megatron states that he is showing him what happens if he doesn't tell him what he wants to know. But Bumper tells Megatron that he's a psychopath, and can cram it up his vent. Megatron swiftly punches Bumper, which knocks him across the room, and Soundwave reports that their prisoners' communications were jammed, and therefore their reinforcements are not coming. Since they're not in any immediate danger, he suggests a different course of action: to deploy a specialist to pry information from Bumper's mind. Through this method, they are able to determine that there is a plan to capture the arena fighters, and that Megatron sits atop the list of the Cybertronian law enforcement's most wanted. Soundwave's conclusion is that there is no immediate threat nor any useful information within Bumper's mind. Megatron then declares that the site is compromised, and informs Soundwave that he can tell his master that he thinks he can do business with him, but only after they've met. Megatron turns his attention to the damaged Bumper, looking to continue punishing the Autobot for calling him a psychopath. The punishment is quick and painful, as Megatron ties up the last loose end at this location by crushing Bumper to death. In Kaon, Soundwave arrives at Megatron's gladiatorial safehouse with a message, but Swindle warns Soundwave that the big guy is in a bad mood after he lost his arm in his latest fight. Soundwave questions his functionality, but Swindle assures him that Megatron is good. Well, as good as one can be with one arm. Soundwave then enters the room and approaches Megatron, to see the Constructicons replacing Megatron's arm from one they collected from a casualty of a fight, and Megatron coldly asks Soundwave what he wants. Soundwave reports good news. He has made progress on Megatron's request for a flight-capable combatant, but not just one. He's acquired 3: Skywarp, Thundercracker, and Starscream. In awe of the presence of the famous gladiator Megatron, Starscream kneels before him and pledges his undying allegiance. But Megatron questions Starscream's flight ability, and Starscream explains that all 3 of them can fly at beyond 3 times the speed of sound. Starscream begins to thank Megatron for this opportunity, explaining how honored they are for the chance to fight alongside him in the arena. But Megatron states that he has something much better in mind for each of them. The 3 Seekers look disappointed, but Megatron assures them that they will wear his badge, they will kill for him, and that in this time of change, they must all be flexible. Starscream agrees, and Megatron turns the trio over to Hook for modification. Elsewhere in Kaon, the Cybertron Security Force holds a funeral service and memorial for their fallen soldiers, Fastback and Bumper, who died in their confrontation with Megatron. Sentinel Prime delivers the eulogy, and claims that losing one of their own is never easy. This is a great loss, but not a tragedy. Loss of life is only a tragedy if it is without purpose. He continues that some might say they may not see the purpose immediately, but that it will present itself in time. For him, this moment offers an immediate startling purpose. He may only be the head of the security forces, and not able to make policies, but together, they can enforce the law. These criminals have their attention. The only question left is, what do they do with it? Sometime later, a parade is held for the unveiling of a new statue, recognizing Senator Decimus and his outstanding dedication to the state and its people. Decimus begins to express gratitude to the gathered crowd, but the ceremony is interrupted when 3 Seekers arrive. Skywarp uses his ability to teleport to land behind Decimus, and he abducts the senator, leaving his security forces confused when they mysteriously vanish. But Skywarp teleports both himself and Decimus to an unknown location, reuniting with Thundercracker and Starscream. Starscream taunts the senator, and Decimus demands to know why they're doing this. Starscream coldly remarks that if he told him, they'd have to kill him. Skywarp, Thundercracker, Starscream with Senator Decimus held captive, fly away from the ceremony, calling their mission a successful one. Elsewhere, from his office, Senator Ratbat watches the footage of the increasingly destructive attacks, and begins to realize that his plan might have gotten out of control. With Megatron's cause now rising amongst the masses, he puts out a call for new recruits to join the Gladiator games. Sunstreaker considers joining for a moment, but his brother Sideswipe advises against it. Watching the fights is one thing, but actually participating is another, and the Predacons express their annoyance at all the amateurs wishing to compete. That is until they spot Grimlock and the Dinobots amongst the crowd. Finally, bots that are worthy of competing. Meanwhile, backstage, Rumble and Frenzy protest being placed under Soundwave's command, but Megatron silences both of them and reminds them that they've been modified for a reason, and that there will be no debating this matter. Megatron then takes the stage, and the adoring crowd cheers for the famous gladiator. He addresses the crowd by reminding them of where they've come from, but right now, in this moment, they gather in Kaon so they can bring their misery together and fight. He appeals to them by reminding them that they are the forgotten until they stand with a blade in one hand and a throat in the other. Nothing else could make them feel more alive. Assembled before him, he sees strength, power, and the most dangerous Cybertronians alive. While they can wear badges and join teams in the pits, what if the badge they wore never came off? What if all of Cybertron were their arena? What if there was one badge for all of them, and instead of fighting each other, they attack those that put them there, and they take what's rightfully theirs? Megatron then orders his Seekers to bring out the captured senator, planning to execute him to make a statement that could make their mark upon this world. But Megatron's words are interrupted when Autobot security services arrive, led by Prowl and Sentinel Prime. The security forces blast a fog amongst the crowd, and Prowl orders his team to move in. The gathered bots try to flee, but are unable to escape. Seeing no way out, Megatron declares that if they're not getting out of here, neither is their precious senator. But Megatron's taken down, and he's forced into inhibitor claws. Megatron doesn't go down without a fight though, and threatens to kill the bots that have captured him, but that means little now, and one of the security officers calls in Megatron's capture to Sentinel Prime. As Megatron's arrest is about to be processed, an Autobot officer taunts him, mocking his size, that he expected the great big bad Megatron to be bigger. But Megatron remains silent and instead shoots an evil glare at his captors. Megatron and his followers are brought to the Autobot HQ, and the influx of prisoners frustrates Sentinel Prime. And to make matters worse, protected by Senate directive, Soundwave will walk free. As the rest of Megatron's crew bicker with one another in their holding cell, Megatron orders for Starscream to be killed. But Starscream attempts to save himself by offering to turn in valuable information to the Senate, in exchange for his own freedom and the freedom of the others. Unfortunately for Megatron, he's told Starscream everything. With the prison facilities at 300% capacity, Megatron's forces are in a tight squeeze, literally and metaphorically, and Starscream is marched away from the other imprisoned gladiators, reminded that they aren't his friends anymore, and that he should be more worried about what he's going to say to the council. Starscream is then brought into a Kaon Council hearing to testify against his former friends. The charges are as followed: assault, murder, armed robbery, destruction of state property, inciting civil disobedience, selling stolen goods, firing upon a state senator, multiple attacks on state officers and state property, supplying known criminals with illegal weaponry, vehicle theft, and misrepresenting himself before a state official. Starscream brushes it off and chuckles, and responds by saying, "Nobody's perfect." Starscream risks a great deal coming before the council, and he sarcastically states that he was just eager to see how the other half lived. This enrages the council, who shout that the chair holds the prisoner in contempt. Starscream once again sarcastically questions whether or not empty chairs also hold him in contempt. Finally, Starscream begins to give his true testimony. He has a message for all of them, including the ones locked in their cells. It was through their own interests that brought them here. They didn't just make it possible, they made it happen, and all they did was give it a badge. Starscream is then ordered to be taken away, but he raises his weapons in defiance and begins firing on the council. This was the plan all along, Megatron's plan. Soundwave and Starscream easily destroy the council, and Starscream etches their symbol into the meeting room's viewing screen. From their cells, the prisoners can hear the bloodshed, and Megatron is pleased. He had deliberately engineered the entire arrest, and Starscream's defection in order to easily slaughter his enemies. Megatron begins to reflect on the journey they've been through, and what it's taken them to get there. In the mines, they had no idea that destiny must be harnessed, kicked and ridden until it takes them in the right direction. Not just where they want it to go, but where they force it. And suddenly, a blast from Starscream creates a hole in the cell wall, big enough for Megatron to escape. He demands Starscream to not waste any time, and to open all cells to free everyone, not just those who came in with them. Today will be the day that they harness Kaon. Soundwave provides the new recruits with weapons and badges, and Starscream delicately points out that when Megatron fought in the pits, he often led with his right hand, and it consequently got him into trouble at times. But to correct this, Starscream presents him with a new devastating weapon, a new arm-mounted fusion cannon, something to make sure that a fair fight is the other guy's problem. Megatron blasts a hole in the wall with his new weapon, and orders the group to attack as predators do to their prey. Show them no mercy, and he declares that this era on Cybertron is ending. Today, everything burns. Meanwhile, aboard a pleasure vessel filled with Cybertron's upper class, their social gathering is interrupted when Megatron orders an attack. Thundercracker hesitates though, and Skywarp goads him into firing at the vessel, causing it to crash into the city below. Onlookers are stunned at the severe amount of damage caused by the burning vessel. As Kaon begins to burn, Sentinel and the Autobots attempt to fight back to retake the city from Megatron and his followers. But this will be no easy task. The rebels have caused a massive amount of damage, and jammed Autobot communications with Iacon. Sentinel realizes his options are running out, and decides he's going to deploy the Apex and commands the Autobots to hold the line while he falls back to retrieve it. While Megatron and his troops lead the assault on Kaon, Soundwave meets with his mysterious boss, who is revealed to be Senator Ratbat. Ratbat admits that he has been performing a last-minute reallocation of the city funding and a backup of their precious state data archives to a data cube. It's not personal, it's just politics. Ratbat then questions Soundwave about his lack of communication. He's been extremely hard to reach for the last few cycles. Ratbat reveals that he was the one behind the plan to automate the mining outpost C12, allowing him a nice little cut of future mining profits. All he had hoped for was a little instability, but now things have gone too far. But with the information he has downloaded on the data cube, and the contacts he'll have begging for his time in Iacon, now is a great opportunity for him to execute his relocation. Everything that has happened has created an opportunity for him, and Soundwave agrees. And he aims his blaster at the senator and shoots him in the chest. This is war, and resources are limited. Soundwave plans to repurpose the valuable resources on Ratbat's data cube and rips Ratbat's spark from his body. On the front lines, Megatron's advance is briefly halted by a colossal explosion. He commands his troops to fan out and find where the blasts are coming from, but as the smoke settles, Megatron's optics catch the cause of the blast. On the battlefield, Sentinel Prime has returned, wearing the colossal suit of Apex armor, ready to take down Megatron and all that follow him. Sentinel Prime advances on Megatron, locking him in his sights, but Megatron isn't backing down, and beckons him to come out and fight, to face him like a gladiator. Prime uses the Apex armor, and his firepower throws the rebel leader off his feet. Certain that he has defeated Megatron, Sentinel transmits a message over all Autobot comms, informing them that the Resistance center line is broken, and anyone receiving this message should rally to his location. But Sentinel soon learns that he's unable to reach one of his team leaders through the comms. That leader is Hound. And that's because Hound has become a bludgeoning tool for Megatron, and he uses Hound's body to shatter the helmet of Sentinel's Apex armor. Megatron taunts Sentinel by stating that he's heard that they only gain wisdom through suffering, and tonight, he plans to make him incredibly wise. Sentinel challenges Megatron that if he seeks change, perhaps he should start by changing himself. But Megatron explains that now he sees through the lies, and he has become wiser. Wise enough to see that this is the twilight of their ways, and the dawn of his. He will create desolation and call it peace. But Sentinel scoffs back at Megatron, calling him a criminal, and begins to lift Megatron off his feet. What will they do when they've crossed the planet with his little gang of thugs? With insurrection, the treachery, and even worse, deception. But he's cut off and Megatron launches a counterattack against the Autobot leader, mortally wounding him. Megatron assures Sentinel that he is correct about all of it, everything, only it will be much worse. He doesn't care why he fights to protect the people or the old way. Everything must change, and Primus help whoever opposes him. Meanwhile, the remaining Autobots have established contact with Iacon, and more Autobot reinforcements begin to arrive. But they're too late. Sentinel Prime has been defeated, and his lifeless body is left laying in a crater for all to see. Prowl confirms over the comms that backup will not be needed, and orders a full retreat from Kaon. Prowl doesn't want to admit it, but Megatron has won for now. As the dawn breaks, Megatron begins to think over his latest victory, and the journey that led him to this point. Soundwave points out to Megatron that as the enemy flees, his followers wear his badge. They fight for him. He wields an army and holds a city, but what could come next? Megatron declares that they may be Cybertronian by birth, but they are Decepticons by choice. What comes next? Well, Megatron has a few ideas. Now, over the years, we've seen so many different versions of Megatron's origins, all throughout different forms of Transformers media. In the Generation 1 cartoon, he was essentially just a bad guy, who was partially responsible for the creation of Optimus Prime after he severely injured Orion Pax, and most recently we just saw him in Transformers 1, where he and Orion Pax are best friends. They work in an Energon mine on Cybertron, and it isn't until that D16 learns the truth about Sentinel and heroes like Megatronus that he decides that things need to change. But this origin story is so close to exactly what we get in the build-up to War for Cybertron, what we see in Transformers Exodus and what's mentioned in Transformers Prime. I love the idea that he's a gladiator, fighting his way through the pit, getting the attention of the High Council and law enforcement, and they know that he's a real sustainable threat to Cybertron and the way that they keep order. But let me know in the comments what you guys thought about this origin story. Maybe you read it when it first came out. I'd love to know what your initial reaction was. Or maybe this is the first time that you're experiencing it all together. I'd love to know. And if you guys are excited about this deep dive into the IDW collection, then definitely like this video, sub to the channel for more, and stay tuned for the next video in this series. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.